Hey guys, and welcome to season 3 of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and in this season, I get to make my guests laugh, cry, and even make them think about life a little differently with the questions I fire over to them, which digs into their lives and professions a little differently. We even had a chance to change up the intro, giving you a fresh, new sound. I look forward to sharing season 3 of the Us People podcast with you. Let's go.
Hello, I'm Dr. Graham Stevenson. I'm a sex and relationship coach, and you're listening to Us People podcast with Savia Rock.
Made up my mind, now's my time to shine. Now's my time to shine.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Us People podcast. I'm your host, Savia Rocks, and today I'm humbled to have Dr. Graham Stevenson here with me, who is a sex and relationship coach. Thank you so much, Graham, for coming on the Us People podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You seem so chilled out. I absolutely love it.
There's been lots of preparation for meeting you.
Aw. Thank you so much. So, Graham, my first question for you, which I totally love to ask every single guest I have on the show, is could you tell me a little bit about yourself and also where you grew up, but also how that influenced you to be the person who you are today?
Wow, what an amazing question. I was born and brought up in East Africa. And I was in a culture that was, I was mixed culture and a lot of cross-cultural experience and interaction and movement. So I moved around in different places in East Africa. Then I came back to this country when I was 8 and went straight to boarding school, which was massive trauma. And at school, through the two schools that I went to, I experienced abuse, sexual abuse. And I think I had a very lonely teenage years trying to work out who I was and what I was as a sexual person. Because my body was saying, you know, you're a man now, or you're becoming a man. And my head was saying, well, what does that mean and what do you do? And culture was saying, well, you should be hardwired to be a great lover. You know, how come you don't know? And it was very confusing. But I met an amazing woman who was completely accepting of me, which was just wonderful. No expectations. And so we eventually got married and have been. Well, we don't celebrate our marriage anymore. We celebrate our relationship.
Fair enough.
Because we were connected a lot longer before we got the certificate and the big day. And we like to say we've been together now for 46 years.
Wow.
Of quite a journey. So, yeah, and lots of, I'm sort of on my third career, I suppose now. So I was originally in agriculture, working on farms and working with farmers. And then I started my own landscaping business. And then I went abroad to Tanzania for 18 years as a missionary.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really confusing. I'm still trying to get my head around it, and I'm trying to write a book to make sense of it so that I can answer these questions. That's why I laugh when you say, tell me a little bit about your background. It's like, wow.
But that's amazing. You've done so many things, yet you've had a marriage that you have a connection. I would call it more of a connection. That you have had. Here's a question. I know we'll go slightly off topic, but since we're on the subject, what do you believe is the secret, or if there is one, to be able to have a connection with somebody so unique and for such a long period of time, what do you believe in your mind is the secret to having this, but to be able to also contain it?
I think an awareness of why you are attracted to another person, because a lot of the time it's out of need, and need demands, and the demanding and the expectation of what I need from you is a strain on the relationship.
Okay.
It's not wrong to have it, but if you are aware of it, it helps you to put it in perspective. And I think an awareness alongside that the person that you're attracted to, you have unconsciously chosen because they are a sort of sacred minister to you of your discovery of some very vulnerable parts of yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can receive this person as, you are really precious and valuable to me, and in this love that you have for me, I can afford to be vulnerable to discover myself. And the more I discover myself, the more I've got to give to you and share with you. But if I go into need, I'm going to start demanding from you, and we're both going to get into a place of opposite sides of the, one in the red corner and one in the blue corner kind of thing.
Does that come down to unconditional love and conditioned love? Do you think that is part of it?
I think the unconditional love is a really precious thing about it. It's developing the unconditional love, because you do have needs. Everybody has needs.
Yeah.
And it's when you go to somebody you love and ask for a need to be met, if it's safe, it's okay. But if you're attracted because you're both wounded, and what you're expecting is that the other person is the healer, is going to be your doctor,
Yeah.
you're going to just be asking the impossible of each other.
That totally makes sense. Do you find that a toxic relationship? Would you define that as a toxic relationship, knowing that two people who are only together because of need rather than love, do you think that will hinder both of them in the long run?
Yeah, I definitely believe that there are relationships that should stop, and they usually have got into a place of dependency and need, and they've lost sight of, or there never was any of the other mystical side of it, of you're also my healer.
Yeah.
And you probably don't know, nobody's consciously a healer. It's just the fact that they love unconditionally and give themselves to the other person. And it's aspects of themselves that are healing.
I understand that. Here's one that I want to know a little bit more about yourself, Graham. And could you? He's laughing. He's laughing. He's laughing. No, because
I'm nervous.
no, don't be nervous. Because listen, you've had 3 different career paths. I'm sure there are more, because we never even finished the first question. The first question off. But I want you to go a little bit more into it, and my question is, could you define yourself as a person? When you look in the mirror, what does your reflection say to you? But also, how does your emotions connect to you by what you're seeing when you see your reflection in the mirror?
That's a really interesting question, because I'd say I've actually done this exercise as part of my training. You stand completely naked in front of a 8x4 mirror.
Okay.
Somebody stands next to you, and you're in front of all your people you're training with, and you have to talk to yourself about, from head to toe, your body. And it's a really interesting exercise, because I realized at the first time I did it, I realized how disconnected I was from my body,
Wow.
how it was there. It was a vehicle for me to get around. It was useful. It was, there are lots of objective views of it. And I remember, and I did it again a couple of other times. And each time, as I got more connected, I felt like I was talking about a friend more and more, and less about a body.
Yeah.
And so my relationship to my reflection is growing more personal, less critical, more accepting. And obviously, as you get older, you count wrinkles and bits start to droop and fall off and stuff like that.
What's falling off?
Well, not quite falling off, but they don't quite sit the way they used to,
I love
in
the
your
way you
youth.
said that. Yeah.
But at the same time, your capacity to enjoy life is growing, and it's like your body is a testimony to the life you've lived, and you just think, yeah, that's amazing, thank you.
Yeah.
You know.
Most definitely. No, I definitely. So, when did your journey begin in you deciding that you want to be a sex and relationship coach? Because you've been from one journey and then you transitioned to another journey and then you went on another journey and then you decided, I'm going to be a sex and relationship coach. What drove you in this direction?
Well, I know that there was something that formulated in my mind when I was a missionary and I was working with people, and I connected with a capacity in me for compassion and for people in totally different circumstances. And I found that when I moved with compassion and love towards these people, I got the best of them back towards me.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, you know what? I want to be a great lover. I want my gravestone to say he was a great lover. Little did I know what that would mean, because it's almost like the universe said, oh, great, he's no idea what he's asked for. Okay. And I often think to myself, oh no, but I'm in this amazing shitstorm because I said that. But I also know that this agony that I'm going through, I believe, is expanding my capacity to love and accept myself and other people. And that's very true. I never knew that I'd end up. I mean, I was a Christian missionary,
Yeah.
and I was teaching on sex and relationships and marriages and stuff like that. And I was doing counseling work with my wife. And then it came to a point of coming back to this country and having to have an identity and a qualification. So I trained as a sex coach.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I was already frustrated with the fact that I couldn't connect physically with my clients. You couldn't even hug your clients. You couldn't. You had to be apart from them. And I also thought the thing about sex is you can't just give somebody a book and say, well, read the book and then go and do it, which is what a lot of sex education is about. Well, actually, it's worse. The sex education we get in schools is like, here's a car crash. Now, here's a driving manual and the car keys. Go and teach yourself with some of your mates. And I just thought, touch is where it starts.
Yes.
Touch is the basic communication. I need to be an expert in touch and teach people the art of touch. And I need to give them the framework in their minds so that they understand where it all fits in. But at some point, they've got to let go, because the best sex is when two bodies actually connect.
Yeah.
And most minds are in the passenger seat. It's the bodies that are driving.
I like your outlook on the way you deliver what you say. It does make a lot of sense to me. What is it like being a man? What is it like being a man who is a sex coach? Because I've spoken to many women. You are actually no, I have. I've spoken to many women sex coaches, and
Yeah.
and they obviously have a different perspective. It's similar, but it's different at the same time. But you are the first man I've ever had on the show who is a sex coach. So I have to ask you, Graham, what is it like being a sex coach from a man's perspective? And how would you compare that to necessarily a woman's perspective?
I think from the talking point of view, when I do Zoom calls with couples or individuals, it's basically my authority as a man,
Yes.
and my authority, my qualifications, my perspective, that kind of thing. When it comes down to touch and massage, I often laugh because I think to myself, it's really weird because there's a massive difference between the way men and women get rewarded and viewed in society. And
Yeah.
I'm totally for women. But in my profession of touch, it's the other way round. I can never charge the same as my female colleagues. I never get as much work as my female colleagues. It's I'm experiencing what most women experience in all the other things. So there's a glass ceiling for what men can charge, and it's about 30, 40, 50 pounds an hour less than what women can charge. And that's basically because men have been paying for sex for centuries.
Yeah.
So they're very happy. And women have got this idea that there's something wrong with it, or it's something about their value if they've got to pay for something, which they're kind of expecting to get free in a loving relationship.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and you know, I can see the development as you for things like counselling. People never used to go to counselling. Now everybody goes to counselling, you know. And in 10 years' time, or after I'm long dead and gone,
Oh.
sex coaching and massage therapists will just be like sports massage therapists. It's like there won't be so many hang-ups about it. So
It's
it's
interesting. That is definitely interesting, the fact that you say it like that. I thought that you would have been on the same level, and I thought more people would come to you knowing that you are a man, especially if men are experiencing trouble with their sex lives. I thought more men would come to you and feel more comfortable talking about it.
some are, some are, um, but I suppose my niche market is I feel my niche market is to provide a safe male container for women to connect with themselves.
Okay.
And one of the hardest things that a lot of women have is coming to me in a massage context and really getting into their heads. I'm paying for this. This is all about me, and it's for my pleasure,
Yeah.
and I don't have to worry about him. There's women are so programmed to provide for somebody else, to accommodate somebody else, to actually get back to know this is for me. Just learn to receive.
Yeah.
It was a really hard lesson
See?
and a scary place to go to.
But sometimes I feel we need it. If we don't go to those scary places, how will we learn to evolve as individuals and humans? I
Yeah.
think. What are the early warning signs that someone's sexual relationship is in trouble?
Well, I guess if you sex is like a thermometer. It
Yep.
can be if you ever have a relationship issue and you say, well, how's your sex life? And most of the time it's like it's going downhill fast. There are times when people have had real issues in a relationship and you ask them and they say, oh, it's fine, it's fantastic. And you think, wow, that's really interesting. It's good because you have a vital connection somewhere that's not messed up by this other thing.
Yeah.
Or it could be you might be completely out of touch.
That happens.
Yes. But sex is a really good thermometer. And asking yourself, I mean, it's going to go up and down and change. Everybody changes. Their bodies change, And so the sexual relationship changing is not an unnatural thing. And if you have the communication and the acceptance and the understanding to be able to go with the change and understand that this is healthy and acceptable, as opposed to, no, this is a symptom of something else.
Yeah.
That would be the awareness that I think people should have. I mean, can you actually talk about it is probably the first thing.
That's what I was going to say. If people find it hard to talk about, people have this stamp on the word sex. So when you start talking about sex, people either start laughing, they go into a shell, they go into a box, they start hiding who they are, or like you said, they say it's great and it's really not. How can we as human beings communicate better with each other to help each other understand that there is nothing wrong with talking about sex? It is part of us, it is part of our being, it is part of us reproducing, it is part of us connecting with each other. How do you feel that we can help each other to speak about sex more openly and feel confident about it?
I always like to draw an analogy with food, because sex has no meaning. It's just a reproductive function. The meaning that it has is how you're brought up, the context in which you're brought up, your own personality. All these things are meanings. And the most important question you should ask somebody you're going to have sex with is not, do you want to have sex? I mean, okay, you're attracted, but if we had sex, what would tomorrow look like between you and me? And what would the future, how would it affect the future? Because if I wanted to go out with you and say, do you fancy a Big Mac? And then, well, we had a Big Mac, we're seriously connected now. It would be, well, wait a minute, what does a Big Mac mean to you? I only have Big Macs with people that I'm really seriously into. It would be nice to know that, before I have a Big Mac with you, or a drink or a coffee or something like that. And of course, it's different in different cultures. So you could not have a Big Mac with me without serious conversation in other cultures.
Yeah.
Because they put a huge amount of meaning on eating together, or a man and a woman eating. And we have a sort of Victorian background and a moralistic background, usually judgmental. It's different in different generations. I understand that. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. But we still need to have this discussion of what is the meaning of this, And if you intuitively know, well, let's go for a meal, it means nothing. We just sit down. It's an opportunity to actually talk. It's not about the meal. And after this meal, I like you or I don't like you. Yeah. It was great, Then that's fine if you're both doing that together. But if one of you is thinking, oh no, my whole future's wrapped up in this, and I'm already thinking about the babies and the house and goodness knows else, and the other person's just having a Big Mac, in effect.
I like the way I like the fact that you used a Big Mac. Graham, you could have used anything, but you used a Big Mac.
Now I realise, of course.
I love that. I'm always going to remember that moment. Graham used a Big Mac, and you know what? I understand why. Yeah. I do understand why. One of the things that you did say that resonated with me, and I would love to ask you a question from your point of view, is you spoke a little bit about cultures. Cultures are so important, especially when they're going to see a sex therapist or a sex coach. Have you ever dealt with a situation where you're dealing with a specific culture, for instance? It could be Muslim, it could be Chinese, it could be English, it doesn't matter, West Indian. All of them deal with their sexuality in a different way. Some of them is very sacred. how do you, I know you're not allowed to go into detail about who your clients necessarily are, but do you have a story that you could possibly share, that how you have helped a specific culture when it comes to dealing with their sexuality and their connection as a couple when it comes to intimacy?
I think it's quite difficult because individuals and couples have different issues,
Yes.
and if it is a strongly conservative religious culture,
Mm.
which could probably cover most of the big religions, they tend to be sex negative. They tend to believe in God the Creator. So I usually take the line of, do you know that God the Creator gave you 3 brains, and these 3 brains have distinct sexualities about them, and they're not wrong, and they actually mean that you can have a highly fulfilled sex life, rather than you're only making babies, man on top, woman underneath, once every week, or whatever your context is that you've been given. This is about connecting with who you are and finding your permission within yourself
Yes.
to be who you are, which kind of, I would have thought, is what every God-believing religion would want.
Yeah,
Would
I
assign,
agree.
say, yeah, because if you're born with no arms and legs, you have to accept that is who you are, and that restricts you. If you're born with with the ability to sprint or something like that, it's not envious or something. It's like fulfilling your capacity is your God-given right.
Yeah, that is
And so
true.
if you're a sexual person, and it's ironic to me that sex is the way that we bring life onto this planet,
Yes.
and yet it's not something that many of the major big religions say as the core of being a human being is.
That's true.
So my big issue when I got this up, I thought, wow, there's a tiny little book in the middle of the Bible called the Song of Solomon. It's all about sex. Nobody talks about it. They talk about all the rest of the stuff, and yet we're all here because
Because of that.
we came through somebody's vagina because 2 people had sex,
Yeah.
and then we actually want to turn our backs on all that stuff, and we don't train ourselves to have really good sex. Sex is almost like the unwritten way in which you worship God. Really, you connect with the universe. You expand, and you do something that has life potential, generating potential, either in producing a human being or just producing love and connection.
Yeah. That is
Sorry, I'm beginning
definitely
to
true.
get excited now and get onto
No,
my.
I like it. No, this is good. This is exactly what I wanted. Don't change yourself. Be exactly. Yeah. Okay. Keep going, Graham. Keep going.
The biggest problem is shame.
Yeah.
Shame and guilt are the feeling of shame and guilt is why we put stuff into the shadows and put it under the carpet and lock it up in cupboards and keep it away from it. And we brush ourselves up to be acceptable to other people. And yet, often the most powerful aspects of ourselves are in the shadows. And we exhaust ourselves
Yeah.
trying to keep them there.
Yeah.
And if you're associated with a group of people, and I'm using this very broadly, it could be a family, it could be a religion, it could be a society, in which there is a form of behavior that's acceptable
Yes.
and it's quite rigid, you're going to spend a lot of time and effort suppressing those parts of you that are unacceptable.
That is
And you
true.
may, you may be the archbishop, and then that energy will creep out and bite you, and you'll do something, or you'll get found out, because the life force in you is trying to live through you, and you are stopping it in certain ways. And so it starts to, it's like stagnant water. It gets toxic, and then it finds the easiest way out. And you start doing stuff that accuses you for who you are,
Yeah.
and you suddenly become, oh, you're a such and such, whatever the label is, but in fact you're not. Essentially, you're a human being who's desperately trying to love, but you haven't found the way to do it properly, because we don't teach that. We teach, you know, read, write, and economics, and I don't know what else. So much more
But
important.
this is but
And
this is why. This is why I said to you, people don't talk about it. They put
yeah,
it in a box and they throw it away, or they giggle at the fact that they have to talk about sex, or in sex education, like in school there wasn't
mm,
much even said about it, and like you said, they throw it's like going for a driving test, and then
mm,
that's why kids go out and try it, and then pregnancy happens, and then you've already reproduced before
mm,
you're even ready to have a child and understand what having a child is and being a mother is, and you don't even know your body yet because you've already had sex because the teacher said this is what sex
yeah,
is. Go out and try it. They don't physically say go out and try it, but they're like, this is sex. And then you intrigued. You want to know what it's about. As you're a teenager, you have emotions and you want to learn more about those emotions. You learn about attraction to somebody in school. You go ahead and start
yeah,
experimenting. That's another thing that I'd love to talk to you about. You go out and start experimenting. And before you know it, you've done so many things that nobody else has taught you because nobody gave you a manual and said this is
mm,
how you do it. So my next question for you, Graham, is talk to me about experimenting with different sexualities, because that is something that I feel that we should also talk more about, because people, like you say, they put labels on you and
mm.
say, oh, you're a lesbian or you're gay. And could you talk more about sexualities and the 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 individuality of each one?
I think your sexuality, in one sense, is not your core individuality. There is a place
Exactly.
that's deeper.
Yes.
And if you connect with that place, you can make more sense. If you connect with the core, you can work your way up to the surface, making more sense of the surface. Most of us are at the surface, disconnected from the core, and we try and explore all sorts of different things to connect with our core reality.
Yeah.
And I and and so I think some people are definitely experimenting. Some people are in transition. Some people have connected with their core, however they identify and however they express their sexuality. I think going back to the school thing, it's really interesting for me. The experimentation should be done in environment at a time when you're asking the questions.
Yeah.
So school notices that they sit down and you lift these sort of punch bags and you skip around and you do sort of things at one level of school. And then they notice that your body's forming, your muscles are changing. And so they think ahead, we need to do sport. We need to teach these people motor skills, coordination, teamwork. We need to give them exercise to develop their bodies physically. The same thing happens. People grow breasts, hair
Yeah.
in strange places, their
Yeah.
voices drop. And the adults say, oh my God, we don't want anything to do with this. We will just give them a bit of information. We've got to give them something because that's our basic responsibility for adults. We don't say, okay, we'll teach you how to touch. We'll teach you how to give touch and receive touch and connect with your pleasure, because your motivation now is to enjoy being sexual.
Yes.
What we're trying to do is to stop you being sexual by filling you with fear and responsibility. But really, what we should be doing is teaching you the right way. Then you would look at pornography and think, oh, that's false.
Yeah.
There's acting. I already know that going faster doesn't make you a better lover. It's actually going slower that makes you a better lover.
Yeah.
And all those kind of things. And because we leave the gap open, all the stuff comes in, and then the rest of your life is spent trying to work it out. So a lot of my work is actually educating people or giving them the space in which to fulfill what they should have done in their teens, which was to have interactions, to have relationships, to have experiences that meant that when they arrived at a relationship, you could say, I'm Graham, and I really know what turns me on, what I like, how I can judge, and I'd love you to do that for me, as opposed to, well, how about we both grope around in the dark? I have no idea what I want or no, this kind of thing. It's going to, we might hit jackpot. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. And if we don't even have the communication, we don't even have the language,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not romantic having a penis. It's not sexy. You take a penis to the doctor, you know.
Yeah.
You don't take a penis to your lover. It's not loaded enough. Sorry.
I like that. It's not loaded enough. Someone said that to me the other day, actually. They said, "Oh, you wouldn't want a penis." I said, "Why?" It's like you don't need one. You wouldn't want one. I said, what's wrong with having one? No, it's just like a weapon, and it doesn't do what it's meant to do all the time.
Yeah.
So I learned something from my friend who said that, because they understand their body. They understand why their body is the way it is, and they also studied for themselves and experimented for themselves. And they said that they wish they had a person like yourself, Graham, who could give them an open mind. That's a good way of saying it. An open mind to knowing that it's okay for you to be confident within your body and yourself, to be able to want to please yourself and your partner that you're with. And I think that's another scenario that I would like to ask you is, I've known stories where men and women have been married and but they are attracted to the same sex, but they are married to the opposite sex. And they've been in their marriage for years. And I'm sure you've heard this before. I'm sure you may have even been through it with a client. How do you help those type of people when they're in a predicament? Say, for instance, like a man is married to a woman. He's been in his relationship for 15 years. He has kids, but really he's attracted to men. And he comes to you and he says, I need help with my sexuality. I'm married to a woman, but I really love men. How would you help him, or even her? How would you help them?
I mean, I help them just the same way that I help lots of people with relationship problems. Marriage is a box that we've been given by Hollywood, by the church, by culture, and we try and put two individuals into it.
Yeah.
And I always say to them, your marriage is going to change. Like Esther Perel says, nowadays, if you look at the statistics, you're going to have 3 marriages in your lifetime. They could possibly be to the same person. If you're not aware that your marriage when you're having children and bringing them up is going to be totally different to your marriage when they leave home, and your marriage when you're retired. And if you don't reformulate the relationship, you're just going to get bored or cheat. Or it's about honestly coming to the table and saying, well, if you want to stay together because of the kids, you need a relationship box that is honest with the kids and with each other. And that if you're attracted to other people, whether they're men or women or whoever they are you going to find the capacity for that to be in your marriage? Because now we have open marriages, we have consensual non-monogamy, we have polyamory, and people are beginning to really be truthful with who they are and how they are. And so the marriage has now got to be a word, a bit like love, that covers a whole host of stuff. And we've got to accept the fact that what we really want is people connected happily. That's what builds a society. And if we stick to a formula like marriage, monogamy, and all this kind of business, as people become more in touch with themselves, it's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Because it held together when all women behaved like this and all men behaved like that, and this was the box, and you stayed in that box until you died. And everybody said, yeah, we're much happier in marriage. And of course, I don't think they were. You know.
I don't think that's true, actually. No, I don't think they were either. I think
For
that's why.
some, it worked, yeah.
But it's a small. I think this is just my opinion. I think it's a small percentage of people are happy in, like, and I mean completely abundantly happy in a relationship, where there are people who, like you say, are more open about sexuality and experimenting and understanding their body, like you did with when you stood in front of a mirror, which takes a lot of confidence too, actually. That takes a lot of confidence, Graham, for you to stand in front of a mirror with a stranger next to you and you talk about your body. Was you confident when you done that?
I was. The thing about that, the thing I remember, because there was 18 of us on this course, so we were all there, and we all knew we were going to go and do it. So, and we all watched each other doing it. So, I remember seeing this woman who was in her 60s. She'd had children. Her breasts were droopy. She was way out of form. And she stood there and said, I love my body. It gives me so much pleasure. And she started moving with such confidence and feeling her body and was in her body. And I thought to myself, you'd be an amazing woman to make love to.
Yeah, because she knows herself.
Yeah. And there was another girl there who was a perfectly trim, young 20 woman with a beautiful tattoo all over her body. And she stood there and said, I don't like my body. And I thought, which bit? You look fantastic, you know. And it was so sad. It was just, and it was such a contrast. And then I heard myself speak and thought, well, I'm a long way from where that woman is. I'm not quite, self-deprecating as that young, 20-something.
What did you say about yourself, if you don't mind me asking? Is there anything that you would like to share that you said about yourself that you feel helped you understand your body more?
The idea was to be honest, and so I was very factual. I just said, well, we've come a long way. This, I looked at it and I thought, this is like looking at a second-hand car, it's got a story behind it. And, there's scratches and bends and stuff like that. And I kind of went through it like, oh, I remember that scar. And yeah, look, there's not much hair left on top. There's all that kind of thing. But I was also aware that there was a disconnect because I was looking at a second-hand car. I wasn't in it. I wasn't owning it. And I thought, yeah, I do get pleasure and I do connect. And I thought, actually, my relationship with my body needs to be far more intimate and less objective.
Yeah. I
need to actually consciously go into it. And so self-pleasuring exercises, which are not masturbation, they're actually about giving yourself pleasure, are really challenging for lots. Most of my clients find it the most challenging thing. Give yourself pleasure. It's about deliberately connecting with your body in a positive way, which is, our society is okay. If you're in pain, we can cope with you. But if you're in pleasure, you're an embarrassment, usually. And it's this shame thing again. It's crazy.
I never actually thought of it that way until you said that now, and that's actually quite true. That is actually quite true. One of the questions that I do want to ask you is, how can people find peace in their sexuality? Because I always ask everyone, how do they find peace within themselves? But I would like to also put sexuality into that. So how do you believe, Graham, that people can find peace within their sexuality, within lovemaking, and just being not necessarily content, but confident in being at peace with themselves and who they are as a person?
I think sexuality is a journey on your own, which is
Yes.
connection with yourself. And that is very much part of it. That seems to me what teens are about. They should be about self-experimentation, masturbation, what do you like, what do you not like, all that kind of
Yep.
thing, so that you understand yourself and how your body works. It's games lessons in sex,
Yes.
basically. Then you need to find the people who accept you. You need to find your tribe. You need to find your partners who appreciate. It's pointless if you're really into tennis joining a football club,
Yeah.
or you need to find people that you can play the game with. Or if you are interested and expansive, then find somebody who's a football player who really loves to learn tennis, and you're a tennis
That's
player and you
true.
really love to learn football.
There you
That
go.
that works very much so. But fundamentally, it's about honesty, being honest with yourself, connecting with yourself, being honest with other people, and connecting with other people. And the biggest problem, the shame thing, is because you're with people that you're frightened to be honest with.
That's true.
And that's the thing, because shame means you're not one of us. You're outside the group. You're unacceptable. You're always acceptable to some people because you're not alone.
Yeah.
Being human is a common experience, and the way you're human and is the same as lots of other people, but you just don't know them. And that's where the internet has been amazing, because you've been able to connect
Yes.
with loads of people very quickly.
Yeah. I love that. That definitely makes sense to me. I'm going to break down some terms for you, but I want you to break them down for me. So, people say the terms of sizzling sex, foreplay, what is real love making, lustful sex. Can you break down your terminology for each one? So, say for instance, people say foreplay. People don't really talk very much about foreplay as much as I think they should. How do you help people when it comes to understanding foreplay for themselves and for each other?
So you can look at foreplay from a purely biological point of view.
Yeah.
In order to have sex, penetrative sex, you need to have engorgement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty easy to measure on a man because he's got this indicator on the outside. But for a woman, it's quite difficult
Yeah.
to measure. And a lot of women get aroused, but they're not engorged. So they're mentally ready for sex, but their genitals aren't ready. They might be wet, but they're not engorged.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you could say foreplay on a scientific level or biological level has got to be uh, the engorgement, all the necessary preparation that goes with getting your bodies ready for this particular act.
Yeah.
On another level, I don't like the word foreplay because actually sex can be foreplay. It's the having a goal and having a context of penis and vagina can be hugely disruptive and pointless because actually better, deeper intimacy can be achieved through, you know, extended connection and caressing, and sometimes not even touch.
That's true.
You can have an amazing connection sitting apart, looking into somebody's eyes and feeling the erotic energy that's going on and almost playing with it. I mean, flirting is doing that. So I don't touch you or do anything else, but I look at you and I think, and the message of my eyes is, ooh, there's a little something here that's interesting. And then you look at me and say, I feel it too. And then I say, wow, I think we could blow on this and turn it into a flame. What do you think? And you either say not interested, in which it's finished, or you say, I could do that as
Yeah.
well. And that is intimate connection without touch that is energetic.
Yes. I
And
totally agree.
it can be orgasmic even.
Oh, wow. See, I like that one. Definitely. So, a lot of women say that they fake orgasms. Okay.
Yeah.
Do men fake orgasms too?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Ah, okay. See, this is a question I haven't.
Orgasm. And before you go on to the next
Okay.
question, orgasms are about performance. They're, they're the goal of traditional sex. And men are hardwired to please women, and women are hardwired to sacrifice their pleasure for the sake of men. And so you get this scenario where it's like, you know what, this is going nowhere. If I had an orgasm, it would finish, and that would be it. So somebody fakes an orgasm, and it can be a man as well as a woman. Most of the time it isn't, because of the way in which we connect sex. But now that women are owning their sexuality, there are a lot of sexually confident women who want in a way that men used to traditionally want, and are
Yeah.
demanding their rights in the way that men used to traditionally demand their rights.
Yeah.
Well, demand their pleasure, put it that way, not their rights. But
See, I've always wanted to ask that because I've never actually had a chance to ask women. Always, well, a lot of women fake orgasms, but do men? And you are the first one to say, yeah, well, they
yeah.
do. They do that. So, what makes sex really exciting? But also, how do you know the partner that you are compatible with to have sex or make love, as they say, with? Because sometimes we are with a person, and although we are happy, like you've said before, we don't know if we are compatible to have sex with each other and be happy for eternity, as they may say. Like, but that comes down also to culture as well. So some people they get married and then they have sex afterwards, and then they're like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. Oh, what do you do? Because they're already married because of religion or forced, or they thought it would be right to wait. What do you do when you're in that position?
It's really difficult because you have been put into a place, you've made a contract without all the conditions to being agreed and known beforehand to maintain that contract.
Yeah.
And traditionally, it's because you didn't have the right to, your sexuality. So why would we talk about it beforehand?
Yeah.
I think change is only ever going to come if people within the context of change things.
That's
And,
true.
and it comes down to which is more important to you, your personal life fulfillment, your relationship, maybe your home, maybe your family, the context of you in this society, or is it you? So gay people, traditionally homosexuals who've been outside the acceptable in terms of acceptance of society, have had to make that choice. Either I
Yes.
shut up, play the game, and I'm acceptable, or I come out and be true to myself. And society is constantly changing and really showing how uncomfortable it is with change by making a lot of noise about accommodating other people. And so, so the homosexuals are much more acceptable. The work has been done to a great extent.
Yeah, that's true. That
perhaps
is definitely true.
heterosexual people who want to have open relationships is the scary growth edge of society now. Polyamory, I don't know, but you can be sure that if it is expanding the capacity of society to accept more people, there'll be a lot of fun and games and hoo-ha over it while this expansion takes place. And everybody sit down and say, oh, that's okay. Do you remember the days when, people used to do this, that, and the other about these rights? And you laugh at those people and say, "Oh my goodness, it's a bit like going back and women's votes. It's ancient
Yes.
history."
Yeah. Wow.
And I
Yeah.
think there are people who are going to be on the cutting edge of that in their situations, and they have to decide, like, well, am I going to do this? And the best thing, if they're going to do this, they're going to need support for other
Yeah.
people who are doing it.
That's true.
And if they're not going to do it, they're still going to need support for other people who are going to help them cope with, the choices that they've made. And part of that is coming to somebody like me who says, look, I hear you. I have no judgment for you, and I can help you come to make a decision about this. What is truly involved in here? Are you going to feel better for this course or better for that course? And then decide for yourself.
That's a really good way of actually breaking it down, I feel. My next question that I have for you, Graham, is do you think, sorry, pain is pleasure or pleasure is pain? I've heard this term before. I love that. I know you guys can't see Graham right now, but he's put his hands together and he has the biggest smile on his face.
Okay. Pain and pleasure are neural messages.
Yes.
I can do the slightest, gentlest, subtlest touch on some people, and it's really irritating, and they want to scream. I can smack them really hard, and they say, "Whoa, that feels really reassuring. I like that."
That's true.
I've had clients whose process of connecting with themselves has needed what they call impact play. They need to be met physically. And when they get met and their bodies are met physically, they kind of wake up and they become more present and they become more grounded and they become more in themselves. And then they can actually really enjoy feather touch and get into ecstatic states that intensity of concentration and touch, makes.
Yeah,
And there are other people which, if you met them like that, they'd switch off and shut down and go into defense.
that's true.
So, you know,
No, I do understand it. I think it's just that's the beautiful thing about life is that we have a chance to teach ourselves things
yeah.
and nurture our sexuality or our being as humans. So, what are you most proud of that you stand for as an individual?
I think I stand and I try to stand for love. I try to stand for love which is true, love that casts out fear,
I like that one.
love that is a ground of accepting anybody and everybody, and love that is true in that it's got to be courageous and honest. And I say I stand for that. I don't embody it. I don't get it right all the time. But when it works, and when I see it working in my work, and I see how it enables other people to flourish and blossom and expand and have confidence in themselves, I get a great kick out of, you know, not only just being the person I am, but doing the work that I do.
Yeah.
Um,
Most,
but in some ways, it's easier with strangers than when people who are closer to you. So
that is
my
true.
test is always my wife and my children and my close friends.
Oh wow. I can only imagine what you've put them through.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
but in saying that, actually, Graham, what is the best advice that they've ever given you? If you have used them as an experiment or spoken to them about things, have they given you any great advice, or has anybody given you any really really good advice that you've carried with you throughout your life?
Well, a character like mine gets plenty of advice, and and I get advice from different people, and I realize that it's their personality.
Yes.
So I have a friend who's quietly taken me aside and said, um, Graham, you need to maybe talk less and give other people the space to say things because you get very excited about things. And I thought, I never, and I wasn't aware of that. That's really interesting. And I'm a very good listener, when I work,
Mm.
but then I relax. And actually, I need to sort of develop that capacity. Um, Appropriateness is another thing.
Yes.
Please do not mention sex when we go and see my mother, or
I've had that
do
before
you
because
do you have to be
yeah.
so honest that when somebody says, "So what do you have to tell them everything straight up? Why can't you just say you're a coach?" You know,
Yeah, but why do you have to hide it as well? Why do you have to hide what you are?
that's my question. But it is about people's ability to
Accept.
take information or to make connections. I can totally understand it that if sex is an issue and for all sorts of reasons, and it can have very good reasons, they'd probably like to get to know me before they heard about the sexual connection because they might be able to cope with it better. But if I give it to them straight up, you know, they trip up on that and they don't get to know me, and I get that. It's just
I, I like the fact that you've given it to me straight up because you've spoken about Big Macs, foreplay, everything that I could have imagined you to talk about today, and I loved every single moment of it. I would love to have another conversation with you. So
great.
I think it's different strokes for different folks. I would say, um,
Yeah.
but but I loved every single part. What would you like your legacy to be when you decide, because you've had such a I feel like it's a magnificent life because the sheer fact that you've done so many things, and I'm sure one day you'll document it all down for everybody to possibly read it. I would like a copy of that book
Thank
to
you.
read, but
I'm actually doing that. I thought lockdown would be a great opportunity. It
yeah,
hasn't turned out that way at all. But I am in the
I think
process of trying to write a book. So I have the title, but haven't yet finished it. And
it everything with time, nothing before its time, and
yes, yeah,
as far as I know, and I've been through it myself, when it is meant to come out, it will naturally just flow right through you. And I
yeah.
think that's what will happen. So, what would you like your legacy to be when you feel like you've done everything in the world and you decide that's enough, I'm done, I want to relax and have peace?
I mean, I still go back to that thing that he was a great lover.
Mm.
I kind of still have that as out ahead of me, and I think it's about exploring and discovering the capacity to be a great lover at every stage of life.
Yes.
it's going to be challenging when I can't walk and I can't do this and I can't, and still, sort of be a great lover right up until my last breath, would be a legacy of a life lived by example, primarily for me, but if anybody notices, that's great.
See, I like that totally. My final question for you, Graham, is where can we find you on all your social medias? And if anybody would like to get in contact with yourself, like I've been privileged to, where can they find you?
I have a website that it's called G. Stevenson with a V, sexologist.com, which is about my talk therapy and online work and stuff like that. I have a website that deals with more of the massage and the touch therapy side of things, which is called guidedintimacy.com. And I have another one, which is, I guess, specifically aimed for people who are coming along the line of trauma and really major impacts on their sexuality. And that is drgraham.co.uk. So those are 3 websites, because it seems to me it's quite confusing to actually hold them all up together. But and I do work with different people, very distinctly different people.
I love that.
I was going to say, some people start talking because they have an issue, and then they realize that they don't have anybody to experiment with or do exercises with, and so often it comes to a touch involvement as well.
Yes.
Doing massage, because the final thing has got to be in your body. It's got to be experience of your body, not just knowledge in your head.
I love that terminology of things. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Ask People podcast, because I've enjoyed every single second of it. And thank you for your honesty and your sense of humor and your confidence as well, because it shows through and through on the podcast when somebody genuinely loves what they do. And even if they've been through so many things in their life, they still want to help other people. So Graham, thank you so much for coming on the Ask People podcast. I do really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the Ask People podcast. And please remember, you can subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and any other platform that you prefer listening to. Please also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also donate to the Ask People podcast by simply going to the Savvy Rocks website, or just typing in paypal.me/Ask People podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Stay happy, stay positive, and as always, please continue to be kind to one another.
Time to let it go. Now's my time. Now's my time. Time to let it go. Now's my time. Now's my time. Time to let it go. Now is the time for me to focus. Stop all that playing hocus pocus. Stop doing it yourself. You need a little help. This time I want to see you shining.
Yes, yeah. No, it was enjoyable. It was quite interesting to have questions that they're all relevant to people who want to know me, but I've never really sat in that position and really asked myself those questions. I'm kind of, so that was quite interesting. Thank you. Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Now is my time to shine. Time that you let go, time that you let go. Now is my time to shine. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my time. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my time. Time to let it go. Now is my time. Now is my time. Time to let it go. You are your own worst enemy. Thinking too far, what's ahead of me? One day at a time. Just enjoy the ride. Open those eyes, see the light. Ignite that fire inside it. Let it breathe breath into life. Push all your fears to the side. Control your mind.
it's all alright. Enjoy your life, the joy is mine. Commit to you, you got the tools. Everything you do, you make the rules.